In 1947, a French geographer published a book calling his own country a desert. Not a metaphor, a desert. He wasn't talking about the landscape, he was talking about the fact that one city, Paris, had drained the rest of France of nearly everything worth having. Its wealth, its talent, its power, its future. The book was called Paris et le désert français, Paris and the French Desert, by Jean-François Gravier. It became a bestseller because every French person outside Paris already knew it was true. At the end of this video, you'll understand why geography, not politics, not culture, not centuries of bad decisions, is what turned the most naturally diverse country in Western Europe into a city with a very large backyard.
And why, nearly 80 years after that geographer sounded the alarm, the desert is still there. France is not a small country. It is the largest nation in the European Union by land area. It has 68 million people spread across plains, mountains, Atlantic coastline, Mediterranean beaches, ancient river valleys. It looks on a map like a country that should be balanced. Then you look at the numbers. Île-de-France, the Paris region, covers just 2% of France's land. It holds 18% of France's population, and it generates 31% of France's entire GDP. To put that in perspective, the second largest regional economy in France, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, which includes Lyon and the Alps, produces roughly 12%. Paris doesn't just lead.
Paris is a different category of place entirely.
And that gap didn't emerge from nowhere. It was built, slowly, systematically, on the back of one of the most powerful geographic accidents in European history. To understand why Paris dominates France, you have to understand what France actually looks like from the ground. The country is ringed by natural barriers, the Alps to the east rising to Mont Blanc, the highest peak in Western Europe, the Pyrenees to the south, sealing the border with Spain, the Massif Central, an ancient volcanic plateau sitting in the middle of the country like a geological wall. And then, in the north, something completely different, the Paris Basin.
The Paris Basin is one of the largest sedimentary plains in Europe, flat, fertile, drained by the Seine and its tributaries, sitting at the natural crossroads between the Atlantic coast and continental Europe. It has no dramatic geography to speak of. That is precisely the point. Around 250 BCE, a Celtic tribe called the Parisii settled a small island in the Seine, the Île de la Cité, the same island where Notre Dame stands today. They chose it because it sat at the last navigable crossing before the river reached the sea, at the convergence of trade routes running north, south, east, and west. Every empire that followed made the same calculation. The Romans built their city there. The Frankish king Clovis made it his capital. The Capetian dynasty, which shaped medieval France, made it permanent.
Paris didn't become France's capital because someone chose it. It became France's capital because the land made it inevitable.
Geography gave Paris its foundation. Politics turned that foundation into a monopoly. Before 1789, France was genuinely diverse. Brittany had its own Celtic language and its own legal tradition. Alsace spoke a Germanic dialect and operated under its own laws. Occitania, the south, had its own literary culture, its own language, its own identity reaching back centuries. These weren't quaint regional flavors. They were genuine rival geographies, places with the depth to anchor alternatives to Paris. The Revolution dismantled them. In 1790, the Jacobins replaced France's historic provinces with 83 artificial departments.
Each one was sized to be a single day's horse ride from its administrative center, deliberately breaking the geographic logic of the old regions, cutting Brittany into 5 pieces, slicing Alsace away from its historical territory. The borders were drawn not to reflect geography, but to destroy it. Then came the language. In 1794, a priest named Abbé Grégoire delivered a report to the National Convention that shocked even the revolutionaries. Of France's roughly 28 million inhabitants, fewer than 3 million spoke French fluently. The rest spoke Breton, Alsatian, Occitan, Basque, Flemish, Corsican, a patchwork of languages that the Jacobins interpreted not as culture, but as threat. The response was compulsory French schooling, enforced for generations, until the regional languages had been pressed out of public life entirely.
The revolution didn't just move power to Paris, it demolished every geographic anchor that could have competed with it. Once Paris had its monopoly, it built a machine to keep it. That machine is the Grande École. France's elite educational institutions, Sciences Po, the École Polytechnique, the École Normale Supérieure, were built in and around Paris and remain overwhelmingly concentrated in the Île-de-France. They are the single gateway to power in French society. The vast majority of the chief executives of major French companies are graduates of the Grande École. So are most senior civil servants, most cabinet ministers, most presidents. And because the schools are in Paris, the graduates stay in Paris. And because the graduates stay in Paris, the companies locate in Paris.
The Paris region holds 60% of France's foreign-managed financial positions. It accounts for 23% of France's total employment. It is ranked first in the world for reinvestments and foreign direct investment in research and development. A young person from Lyon or Rennes who wants to reach the highest levels of any field in France has, in practice, one option: move to Paris. The provinces don't lose their talented people to the world, they lose them to the capital. And the capital absorbs them and grows stronger, and the provinces grow a little more hollow. Year after year after year. The word Gravier chose in 1947 was precise. A desert is not simply empty. A desert is a place from which something has been taken.
Northern France, Nord-Pas-de-Calais, Lorraine, was once the engine of the entire country. Its coal fields and iron ore powered the French Industrial Revolution. Its mines and steelworks built the railways, the weapons, the infrastructure of a modern state. In the 19th century, the North was France's future. Then the coal ran out. Then the steel mills closed. And the Paris did not absorb that loss. It simply continued growing elsewhere, drawing service industry, finance, and knowledge work away from the periphery and toward the center. Today, the departments with the highest poverty rates in metropolitan France are concentrated in the north and northeast, the former industrial belt, and in parts of the rural south. Some departments that once housed France's heaviest industry now contribute less than 0.5% of national GDP.
The desert, it turns out, is not a metaphor about space. It is a metaphor about time. These are places that had a future, and then Paris pulled it away. Geography this unbalanced doesn't stay quiet forever. In the winter of 2018, France's peripheral regions erupted. The Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests, began as a protest against a fuel tax hike. But within weeks it had become something larger, a revolt of rural and small-town France against a capital that seemed to govern the country for its own benefit. The protesters were not from Paris. They were from precisely the departments that appear on the poverty maps: the hollowed-out north, the rural center, the provincial south. Places where every year a few more young people leave, a few more shops close, and the distance from Paris feels less like geography and more like abandonment. The electoral map tells the same story. The 2022 presidential election, Marine Le Pen won in 9 of France's 10 poorest departments. Not because those voters are extreme, but because the political mainstream Headquartered in Paris, staffed by Grande École graduates, oriented toward the capital's concerns, had stopped speaking their language long before the regional languages were officially suppressed. France has attempted decentralization repeatedly. Regional councils in 1982, regional consolidation in 2015, Grand Paris infrastructure investment programs stretching for decades.
And yet none of it has moved the needle on the fundamental map. Île-de-France still generates 31% of GDP. The desert is still the desert. The name Paris comes from the Parisii, the Celtic tribe that settled a river island in a flat northern basin because the geography gave them no better option. That was 2,300 years ago. And in a meaningful sense, nothing has changed. The Paris Basin is still the flattest, most connected, most naturally productive zone in the country. The institutions are still there. The headquarters are still there. The pools that produce the people who run those institutions are still there. France has been trying to fix this imbalance for at least 80 years and possibly for centuries before that.
Every attempt runs into the same wall.
Not bureaucratic resistance, not political will, geography. And so the real question, the one France has been unable to answer, is whether a country can ever truly escape the logic of its own land. Or whether Paris will still be pulling everything toward its center long after anyone alive today can remember why it started.